5 days before I finally left, I heard my husband tell his best friend that I had nothing better to do. He didn't know I was standing 8 feet away on the other side of the kitchen screen door. Have you ever poured every part of yourself into someone, your time, your career, your sleep, your health, and then discovered, by complete accident, that they never saw it as sacrifice? That in their mind, you weren't choosing them every single morning, that you just had nowhere else to be? My name is Camille, and this is what happened 2.5 years after I stopped being a person and started being a service. Before my husband Reed's accident, I had a life I was genuinely proud of. I ran a small freelance graphic design business out of our spare bedroom, nothing massive, but it was mine. I had steady clients, a growing portfolio, and I had just signed my first contract with a regional marketing firm when everything stopped. Reed was driving home from his cousin's birthday dinner on a Tuesday night in March, when a driver who had been texting ran a red light and hit his truck on the driver's side. By the time I got to the hospital, he had already been in surgery for 2 hours. The doctors explained that the impact had caused significant damage to his lumbar spine and severe nerve compression down his left leg. He would walk again, they said, but not the same way, not without pain, maybe not for a very long time. The months that followed were a blur of rehabilitation facilities, insurance appeals, follow-up appointments with specialists, and nights when Reed would wake up crying because the nerve pain was so severe, he couldn't describe it. I held his hand through all of it. I learned how to help him shower safely, how to assist him in and out of the car, how to recognize the signs that his pain was escalating before he could. I managed 7 different medications with schedules that required a chart on the refrigerator. I drove him to physical therapy 3 times a week and sat in waiting rooms with folders full of paperwork, learning more about spinal injuries than I ever expected to need to know. Somewhere in those first 3 months, I quietly let my client contracts lapse. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Reed needed me more than my clients did and that my business would be there when life calmed down. I told myself this was what marriage meant. You don't disappear when things get difficult. You stay. 2.5 years later, I was still staying. Our days had a rhythm I knew by heart. Reed's medications had to be taken at specific intervals, some with food, some without, some that couldn't overlap by less than 2 hours. I cooked every meal according to the anti-inflammatory diet his pain specialist had recommended. I scheduled and attended every appointment, neurologist, pain management clinic, physical therapy, orthopedic follow-ups, and kept detailed notes from each one so nothing fell through the cracks. I handled everything that required being on your feet for extended periods. Grocery shopping, laundry, cleaning, yard work, the pharmacy, the post office. I became fluent in fighting with insurance companies over the phone. I learned the Social Security disability system in a way I never wanted to. I managed every bill, every form, every automated phone tree, every supervisor who needed to be escalated to before they would actually help. My own business was gone. My portfolio sat on an untouched hard drive. I had let my professional software subscriptions lapse months ago. When former colleagues sent job listings or asked about collaboration, I gave them the same polite response. Things are complicated right now, but thank you for thinking of me. Things were always complicated. I never let myself resent it, not truly, not in a way I permitted myself to sit with for long. In the beginning, Reed thanked me constantly. He told me he didn't know what he would do without me. He called me his rock in front of his family. I held on to those moments, stored them like something I was saving for harder days, and in between them, I was mostly invisible. Somewhere in the second year, the gratitude faded. Not all at once, gradually, the way daylight fades, and then suddenly you look up and realize you can't see anymore. He stopped acknowledging the meals or the appointments I arranged. If dinner wasn't exactly what he was hoping for, he mentioned it. If I was a few minutes late bringing his medication, he was impatient. The version of Reed who had reached for my hand in the hospital had been replaced by someone who expected rather than asked, and I had somehow accepted that as the new normal. I told myself he was in chronic pain. I told myself pain does things to a person, wears down patience, makes even reasonable people hard to live with. I told myself the man I married was still in there, buried under exhaustion and frustration, and that I just needed to be patient. I kept waiting for the morning I would stop feeling so tired. Reed's old college roommate Donovan drove down from Columbus to visit that Saturday. He and Reed had stayed close over the years. They talked regularly, and seeing Donovan always brightened Reed's mood in a way that I couldn't replicate with effort or consistency. That afternoon, I had been in the kitchen for nearly 2 hours preparing food, sandwiches, fruit salad, iced tea, the kind of spread I put together automatically without being asked. Reed's back didn't tolerate the kitchen chairs well, so they had moved out to the back porch. The afternoon was warm. I had the window cracked. I wasn't trying to listen. I was rinsing out a bowl when I heard my name. Donovan was saying something about how he couldn't imagine handling everything Reed was managing, and then he asked. I could hear the genuine warmth in his voice, how I was holding up through all of it. Reed laughed. It was the easy, settled laugh of a man with nothing pressing on his mind. Camille's fine, he said. She doesn't have much else going on, honestly. This is kind of her thing now. I turned off the faucet. Donovan must have said something in response, because Reed continued. She's not going anywhere. She feels too responsible. That's just how she is. I don't stress about it. I stood at the sink without moving. Through the window screen, I could see the back of Reed's head. He was relaxed, leaning toward his friend, completely at ease. The afternoon looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago. This is kind of her thing now. 29 months. 29 months of waking before him, of charting his medications, of driving him to appointments and sitting in waiting rooms and fighting with insurance supervisors and cooking specialized meals and managing his entire world. And that was what he said to his oldest friend. Not sacrifice, not love my thing, as if I had simply found a hobby that happened to consume my entire existence. I didn't walk back outside. I told them through the screen that I had a headache and was going to rest. Reed said the fruit salad was in the refrigerator if Donovan wanted more. He didn't ask if I needed anything. I lay on top of the bed in our room, with the door closed, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't crying. I felt something quieter than crying, a specific stillness that settles in when you finally hear out loud something you have been refusing to know. This is kind of her thing now. That evening, after Donovan left, I made dinner. Reed was tired the way he always was after socializing. Company wore him down physically. I helped him through his nighttime routine, made sure everything he might need was within reach, and then went back to the kitchen. I sat at the table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything I did in a single day. I wrote until I ran out of space on the front of the first page and had to turn it over. Medications management, appointment scheduling and transportation, insurance coordination and appeals, prescription refills, meal planning and preparation, 3 times daily. Grocery shopping, laundry and cleaning, all household maintenance, bill payment, correspondence with doctors, physical therapists, insurance adjusters, and disability caseworkers. When I finished, both sides of 2 pages were covered. I opened my laptop for the first time in weeks and searched for certified home health aid agencies in our county. The rates on the first website stopped me. Certified aides in our area charged between $28 and $34 an hour. For the level of care I was providing, personal care assistance, medication management, meal preparation, transportation, household coordination, a full-service care plan would run approximately $1,100 to $1,400 per week. I had been performing that work for 2.5 years, without pay, without a single day off, without anyone ever framing it as work at all. The number didn't make me angry. It made something in my chest go very quiet. I had never thought of my time in those terms. Reed had never thought of it that way either. To him, I was just Camille, who didn't have much else going on. I opened a new tab and typed the name of a contact I had worked with years before at a creative agency, a woman named Gloria who had always respected my work and stayed connected on LinkedIn. She was still there. She had been promoted twice. I drafted a short message, professional, direct, brief. I told her I was returning to freelance design work and asked if there might be any room for collaboration. I pressed send before I could change my mind. I went to bed that night with a feeling I hadn't recognized in a long time. Not quite happiness, more like direction, like a compass needle that had been spinning for years had suddenly found north. The next morning, while Reed was eating breakfast and watching the morning news, I drove to 3 apartment communities in a neighborhood about 20 minutes from our house. The second one had a 1-bedroom available immediately, $1,340 a month, second floor, south-facing windows that let in long yellow light. The leasing agent showed me the kitchen and the small closet off the bedroom, and the way you could see a strip of trees from the living room window. I took the application from the leasing office, sat in my car in the parking lot, and filled it out completely. On the drive home, Gloria replied, She said she remembered my work clearly, and that they had been looking for a contract designer for an upcoming rebrand. She asked if I was available for a call that week. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and read the message 4 times. I said yes. 2 days before I left, I called the home health aid agency and asked for a care consultation. The coordinator spent nearly an hour with me going through Reed's full situation, his diagnosis, his functional limitations, his medication schedule, his appointment frequency, his mobility needs. At the end of the call, she told me they could have a certified aide assigned within 3 business days. Daily morning visits plus transportation assistance 3 times a week for medical appointments. I scheduled the start date for Friday. That evening I was folding laundry in the hallway when I heard Reed talking on the phone in the living room. He was talking to his sister Rochelle. I could tell from his tone, lighter than with most people, the particular easy cadence they fell into together. He said, "Don't worry about me. Camille's got everything handled. That's what she does." I stood in the hallway with a folded pillowcase in my hands. That's what she does. Not thank you, not I don't know how she manages it, just a simple, comfortable statement of fact, as if I were a utility, something built into the house like the heating system. That's what she does. I put the laundry basket on the shelf and went to the bedroom. I picked up my phone and texted the apartment community to confirm I would be picking up the keys Friday morning. Then I started packing. Not everything, just what was genuinely mine. My work files, my portfolio drives, a suitcase of clothes, the few things in the house that had existed before I disappeared into someone else's needs. The morning I left began exactly like every morning for 2.5 years. I woke early. I made coffee and pulled Reed's first-round medications from the organizer, filled a glass of water, and set everything on the tray I always used. I made breakfast, eggs, wheat toast, the orange slices he preferred on the side. I helped him get settled into the recliner where the angle was easiest on his back. He thanked me for the eggs, without looking away from the television. I watched him for a moment. Then I went to the table and carried out the binder I had spent the past 3 days assembling. It was thorough. Every medication listed with the generic and brand name, dosage, timing instructions, and pharmacy contact on its own labeled page. His complete appointment calendar through December. The home health aid agency information, the coordinator's name, the assigned aide's name and direct number, their daily schedule. Emergency contacts for each of his physicians, step-by-step instructions for his daily care routine, written clearly enough that anyone could follow them without confusion. Insurance portal login information, copies of his disability documentation. I set it on the ottoman in front of him. He looked down at it, then back up at me. "What's this?" "Everything you'll need," I said. "Your full care plan, medical contacts, insurance information, medication schedule. It's organized by section." He opened the front cover slowly and looked at the table of contents. Then he looked at me. And something in my expression must have told him before I said another word, because his face changed. "Your aide starts this morning," I continued. "Her name is on the first page. She'll be here by 9. I've also accepted a freelance design contract, and I'm picking up the keys to an apartment on the other side of town today." He was quiet for a long moment. "Camille, where is this coming from? We can talk." "Last Saturday," I said, "you told Donovan that I didn't have much else going on, that this was kind of my thing now, that you didn't worry about whether I was okay, because I wasn't going anywhere." I paused. 2 nights ago, you told Rochelle that I had everything handled, that that's what I do." He looked at the binder. He didn't say anything. "I chose you every single morning for 2.5 years, I said. "I chose you when it cost me my career, my sleep, my health, my sense of who I was before any of this happened. I never asked for much in return. I just needed you to understand that it was a choice. That I was a person making a choice, not a function running in the background." The doorbell rang. The aide had arrived exactly on time. I opened the door and introduced everyone. I walked the aide through the binder, pointed out the medication organizer, explained the morning routine clearly. She was warm and professional and thorough. Reed sat in the recliner watching without speaking. I picked up my bag and my keys. "I made sure you'll be taken care of," I said. "That part doesn't change because that's not who I am. But I'm not coming back." I walked out into an October morning that felt different from every morning before it. Cooler than I expected. I sat in my car in the driveway for a moment, not from hesitation, but just to feel the particular weight of a decision that belongs entirely to you. Then I drove toward the apartment, with the south-facing windows and the strip of trees. The first week alone was quieter than I had anticipated. My apartment echoed a little with so few things in it, but there was light on the kitchen floor every morning and no one needed anything from me before I had finished my coffee. I had forgotten that was possible. I sat at a card table, I sat up in front of the big window and took my first design call. An hour of talking about typography and brand voice and creative direction, without once thinking about a medication schedule or an insurance appeal. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet for a while, not the depleted quiet of a house where you have been carrying everything alone. A different kind. The kind that belongs to you. Reed called several times that first week. I answered once. I told him I was glad the aid was working out, and that I hoped he was managing well. He asked if there was any possibility I would reconsider. I told him honestly that I was sorry for the pain he lived with every day, but that I had been in pain too, and his pain had never once made mine visible. I wished him well. I meant it. Several months later, he asked if we could meet. I agreed. We sat across from each other in a coffee shop not far from the accessible apartment he had moved into, closer to his clinic, better layout for his mobility. He looked at me for a long moment and then said he was sorry. He said that he hadn't understood what I had been doing because he had stopped seeing it. He said that when the aide was out sick for a week, and his sister Rochelle drove down to help, he finally understood. In a concrete, day-by-day way, what I had been carrying for 2.5 years. He said he understood too late. I told him I accepted his apology. I told him I held no bitterness toward him, because bitterness is a weight I refuse to carry any further. But I also told him that understanding something too late is still too late, and that I had spent enough of my life waiting to be seen. As I drove home from that coffee shop, I thought about the Saturday afternoon in the kitchen, the open window, the easy way he had laughed when he said I had nothing better to do, the certainty in his voice when he said I wasn't going anywhere. I hope that if you're standing at your own kitchen sink right now, listening through your own open window, you hear yourself the way I finally did. Not as someone with nowhere to go. As someone with every reason to leave. If you were in my place, what would you have done? I'd genuinely like to know. And please subscribe to Family Truths if this story stayed with you. It means more than you know.